Hey, let's code a personal website with Astro.build. If you're interested in building your own personal portfolio or other website, Astro is a really fun way to do that. It's a static site generator with kind of superpowers to take your content-oriented site to new level. It's also capable of displaying dynamic content by interacting with server functions. Let's go to the docs. It's fully open source. I'm not affiliated with Astro developers or project, but I've just been using it for my own website recently and having a really good time, surprisingly, building this website. It's kind of reminding me of my first steps in web development. The immediacy of seeing something on the screen and being able to publish something for other people to view online. The source code for my website is here on GitHub, github.com/Briley Online. I started it with the Astro starter kit, so it was fairly easy to get running, and I'm learning to use Astro by following the getting started tutorial, which I completed, and today we'll be adding some content. So the site looks like this. Let's get it running. It's running. Okay, let's launch it. Bring it over here. There we go. It's fairly bright and colorful. This is kind of the default theme that Astro tutorial helped me create, and I'm enjoying that. And I've added a custom display here for projects that I'm working on or have completed using Tailwind CSS, like kind of components markup. So my first task, I think, is going to be add some more projects, which is done in this TypeScript file. We have an interface called project. And we need a title to display on this page, a description, and a URL so we can link to something. I mainly work on software, music, and some educational content. I'd like to start working on more of that to provide value to people and share what I've learned in a way that's easy to digest. One example of that is this ebook I wrote called Dart for Everyone. Dart for Everybody. I think Dart for Everyone was like already taken. Yeah, so I need to update the date on that. So essentially we have these categories. Whether or not it's featured, that means it'll display on the front page. I'm also going to build a portfolio page or something like that that displays all of the projects and maybe gives some options for like filtering dynamically with JavaScript. Project status, when it was added, and I think it should be, that was when it was added to the website in a way, but I think it would be more meaningful if it was date published, date completed. Probably published is more common. So I'll look at that. And some freeform tags, the possibility of attaching an image, and a lot of these are on GitHub. So this is my project structure. And if it's a software project, I might have a running demo. And the technologies can be useful for people, especially when I'm doing JavaScript or Python projects. It's very hard for me to focus and narrow down my focus. That's one of the biggest challenges I've had. So my projects are kind of all over the place in various forms of completion. I'm probably not alone in that struggle. So this year I'm hoping to kind of get a little bit more focus, but also kind of give myself the freedom to balance at least the curiosity with the desire to like complete things and build and share. It's hard. So currently I'm building a project called Piano Fitness, which is also open source on GitHub. And we'll be working on that in other streams. Okay, losing my voice. So this is an example of how we're defining these projects. And one refactoring I think I'll do is this date added. I'll change this to date published. Create a branch. So the focus of today's session, I think, is just going to be working on this website and adding projects. I'll take all of the references to that date added. These are sorted by the date added. Okay. Yeah. This is a bit duplicate, so we can. I see filter before sorting is probably more effective. We're just going to save that, date published. I could have done it like this. Yeah, and we will replace all. Yes. So the site should basically still work. If we go back here. And for example, coming to the, this one's a bit tricky. When was it published? Because it's under continual development. All right, well, nonetheless, works for things like albums and books. So Dart for Everybody was published November 13, 2023. And there we go. Once I save it, it jumps down there. That's pretty cool. Immediate. This is so cool. This is what I like about web development. You see a change like almost instantaneously. You don't have to wait for hopefully a massive build process or something. Although I understand there are complicated JavaScript projects with really long build times and pipelines. And I might have a status, let's double check here in this, planned. I have a status for planned. I would like to plan a project, another book for maybe music production, guidebook, handbook or something. The basic concepts like what is compression, what are common compression settings, mixing, mastering. I'm working on that, I'm drafting that. Today we are just going to be working on this website. That's one way to remember I need to focus, and this is hard to focus on. There's so many cool things, right? Well, let's see here. Okay. So Tides of Change was published 17 November 2024. We'll go back. I'll save November 2024. This is sort of ongoing, and I guess I could. It's tricky. I could think of the versions when I published the latest version of that. Software is often under continual iteration, continual development, as long as the project is active, in progress. So we're pretty good. That's it in a nutshell, how I'm doing this. Now, I've got a little bit of duplication here. These album descriptions are kind of it's the same, and though the albums are very similar, I think. But let's have a little bit of fun with generative AI. I'm going to use, what is it called? I think it's Google AI Studio. Yeah. Here we go, bring it over here. And this is an interesting feature. So Google AI Studio is multimodal. It gives you access to several Google AI models, some of which are multimodal, I should clarify. And it has some capabilities like thinking, so showing its thoughts and walking step by step through it. There is a researching model. But that's not visible here. So Gemini 2.0 Flash is the sort of latest in the model series. But they have multimodal understanding and the thinking as well. So there's just a difference in cost, input, output. Huh. It's experimental, maybe. So what I can do is, for these albums, I'll start with maybe Tides of Change. And for each of these songs, I'm going to upload it to the model. And get a little bit of a description. Let's try it out. So add, upload file, music. That's actually here, albums, Tides of Change. And we'll do it from the top of the list alphabetically. And we'll just give it the MP3. And I'll say something like, please describe this track succinctly using details about the genre, instrumentation, arrangement, and mood. So when I run that, it's actually able to extract some details from the track. Melancholic and peaceful solo piano piece in a classical style, creating a gentle and reflective mood. We can check it out. See how accurate it was. Yeah, so it's sort of an apt description. Melancholic, peaceful solo piano piece in classical style, creating a gentle and reflective mood. I think it's good enough to help people get an idea of what it is that they're going to listen to. And my goal here is to get a brief description of all the tracks and then get a description of the overall album. Okay, let's see here. Maybe that. Enter. No, so that's editing the prompt. Delete. Let's try it again. I might have encountered a limit. You can see the token count starts. It's quite, it's 60,000 tokens basically for this song and the prompt. So it's extracting some information from there. I don't know what or how it works. Seems a little bit like magic. And granted, it's not fully accurate. It will hallucinate. Mysterious and atmospheric drone piece with ambient textures creating a dark and eerie mood. Interesting. Let's take a listen. Dark and eerie. Yeah. Okay, one thing I'm noticing is that we're getting some duplication. So we have this dark and mysterious experimental electronic track with an industrial edge featuring percussive loops and synthesized elements creating an unsettling hypnotic mood twice. And it did that just a moment ago too with this is a mysterious and atmospheric drone piece with ambient textures. So I'll have to use headphones. I'm listening to these in the future. But anyway, that's a bit frustrating. What if I add the word unique? I think somehow it's so exactly the same as before. this approach might not work. So a lot of this is me learning how these tools work or don't work in some cases, as expected at least. One thing I might be able to do is, can I attach more than one file? Let me double check if that's possible. Yeah, so I can try to push through this thread, this chat thread here. Next time I'll upload them all in one message, give it a more thorough prompt, ask it to create like a table that summarizes and describes the tracks and the different qualities. So it doesn't have to use so much, because I have a million context length. So I think these tracks will, an album worth, will all fit in one prompt. And if I ask for a table, it doesn't have to like summarize it in prose, but just more like descriptive tags or category list or something like that. Let's try adding uniquely here. So if it is getting fed the context from the previous messages, which is surprising, it will try not to write the same message twice. But the reason I think it's surprising is because these are each like, you know, in the tens of thousands of token count, and I don't think it's going to be feeding all these tens of thousands of tokens to each subsequent run without kind of telling me. Yeah, this is 10,000 tokens. Maybe it is actually. Actually, now that I see the token count here, okay. So uniquely then it would work, okay. Interesting. It's a bit awkward sentence. Please uniquely describe this track succinctly. But there we go, we got one. Well, we can start to get an idea of the types of music, how the model is perceiving it in a way. If perceiving is the right word. I don't know. I'm still confused about how to talk about these models. And timestamp 0, focusing on genre, instrumentation, mood. Oh, interesting. So you can actually move the timestamp. Huh. That might be cool. Right, and one thing I like about this is I can edit the output because sometimes I want to tweak it a little bit. Drone, it's dronal music. It's not tonal, but anyway, it's a weird word, dronal. Good. Now so I modify the model output and I can now sort of synthesize all this, please. Let's see what we get here. All the tracks are part of an album. Please describe the album in around 1 paragraph so that it can be added to a portfolio website. Bit of work to get the descriptions and then summarize it to the album level. But it will. The goal is for it to display here, and I need a unique 1 paragraph description. I should probably keep these notes around so we can build on them a little bit if needed, so that this work doesn't go to waste. This album is a diverse collection of instrumental pieces exploring a range of emotions and sonic landscapes, from gentle reflective piano melodies of classical influence and serene folk ballads featuring acoustic instruments to darker, more experimental electronic tracks with industrial and ambient textures. The album journeys through melancholic introspection, heartfelt yearning, and unsettling atmospheres. It showcases a blend of acoustic and electronic instrumentation, unified by a focus on evocative mood creation and atmospheric depth, perfect for cinematic soundscapes and introspective listening. It's pretty good. I know it's a bit cheesy, but I'm not sure how to to reduce the cheese factor of the LLM output. I don't want to fight it right now. But I think there's some value in these thoughts. So what I'll do is I have my workspace. Let me think here for a second. I'll just do this. It's a bit challenging, spreading myself too thinly while trying to also narrow down how and where I work online. So right now, I'm in my personal profile in Chrome, but I also have another profile for a Google workspace that I have and some projects, piano, fitness, music. Actually, let's say delete. And this is Tides of Change. So all I'm doing here is in my kind of workspace account, just creating a document called track descriptions, and we're going to summarize each track. So let's see here. Wish I could get peek. I mean, I did them alphabetically, but it's still a bit of a pain. Centering the stillness, so let's just do it. I'm so glad Google added Markdown support. That was a good move. Whoa. Can I paste without formatting? Let me try that. Control Shift V. So just I can do it easier next time. But then you lose that, so it's a bit trade-off. Yeah, that's okay. Chocolate strawberry was some kind of chocolate that I had. Then we have gentle presence. So part of the reason I'm streaming this is just so people can get an idea of like some ways that we can work with generative AI in our various things that we do, like music creation or making a website. And showing my kind of learning process as well. Keep forgetting it. Wish I could make that default, and I wish I could make, I probably can, switch to pages format default. Hello, Saitea, welcome. How are you doing today? Okay, I can see that its thoughts are getting a little bit more simplistic. I didn't get the other meta information, but somehow the output was fairly good. No thoughts here, which is fine. Probably don't need actually all of them. Kairos persist. Right now I'm working on a personal website and adding, it's like a portfolio website built with Astro. If you're interested in a little bit of web development and making your own site, it's a really fun way of doing it. It's static site generator with some advanced features for content-oriented sites, even pulling in content from databases and things like that if you need it. So this is my personal site, and I'm working on my portfolio, so showing projects that I've made. And then I'm down in one project, which was a music album, and I'm kind of describing this music album so I can publish that on my website and link to it. It's just a way of like kind of showing what we do and making it easy for people to find, especially when we do things maybe in different places online. So consolidating it. And this is part of a strategy I've read recently, like a hub and spoke or octopus online presence, where you have your personal website, which is the focal point of everything you do, and then you have spokes that point out to the different places: YouTube, SoundCloud, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you are, Blue Sky, all of those. But your main place is your personal place. That way, if any of those other places don't align with your values anymore, or change significantly, or go offline even, your place is still preserved. So that's what I'm kind of doing, making my place, my space. And this is open source on GitHub. If you just want to see how I've structured the site, I might be able to share some ready-made template or something like that based on my experience. And the Astro project is also open source and free to use. So yeah, you can check it out. Web framework for content-driven websites. It's really fun. It's reminding me of when I first started out with web development, how much fun I had just making things and seeing them immediately change. In order to get the content for my website, I'm using Generative AI to help me out a little bit. So Google AI Studio can actually listen to audio and describe it. So I have these tracks, and when I put the track in Google AI Studio and ask it to describe it, it thinks a little bit, and I'm taking these thoughts and I'm copying them into a document that I might be able to use a little bit later. And then it produces an output, which is fairly accurate in surprising ways. It can even figure out, if you send it a song, kind of the mood and arrangement, instrumentation, and genre, which are, even for humans, pretty difficult to describe. So persist, and then shrouded supermoon. I'm keeping all this in a Google workspace account that I've created just to centralize all my work and have some power tools available. This Google AI Studio is also part of the Google workspace. I think I got a little bit off track here, darn it. I was afraid of that. And if I could just see the track title right here, if I could just see it, that would just make things so much easier. Maybe there's a way I'm just not figuring it out. Right click. Just give me a tooltip when I hover or something. I know my file name could be shorter, but this is because I'm publishing the files online, and based on having collected MP3s before and published MP3s, I think you kind of have a format in the file name like artist, album, track title. And you can also include that in the metadata, but not all of the formats that I'm publishing have that metadata. So, shoot. Anyway, I think so that I'll double check, but Shrouded Supermoon is this one. Now the paste without formatting is not working. Command Shift V. Anyway, here we go. So descriptions, tracks, and an album. Control Shift V. Boom. So this is actually the text that I want on the website. And I'm just gathering all this context in case it's useful in the future. It's a bit like, I don't know if I actually need to do that. But given the usefulness of context for these large language models, I might be able to give these details to another large language model or the same in the future and get a similar output for consistency. So now that we've got that, took a little bit. Let's move this off screen. And we are working on this Tides of Change album. So I'll look for Tides of Change and see if it's too big of a description. It might be all right. It's quite large. No, it's too large. Interesting. So this is actually the long description. Which means this file is going to grow quite long. Okay, and then I'll ask for a short description of one sentence. Please describe a short description of one sentence using straightforward language. When I ask for straightforward language, maybe it's not so colorful and cliche or cheesy. Not always the case, but let's see what it does. This instrumental album offers a mix of peaceful piano melodies, heartfelt folk tunes, and darker electronic soundscapes, creating a journey of varied moods for quiet listening. Okay, we'll use the word journey there. It does. These models all use the word journey. Join us on a journey. Maybe they're getting that. I'm not sure where it comes from. But there we go. Now we have a distinct description. And it's updated there. Looking good. Okay, I'll get a little bit of tea and we'll continue this. So building a personal website using Astro.build and generative AI to help us with some of the content. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll be right back. Thanks for your patience. Okay, well, I don't know if I need to continue this process, the content management part online, on stream at least. I just wanted to sort of showcase how I'm using generative AI to help me with my personal website content. And now let's look at how to use it for the development. Since Astro is just built with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, the models have a fairly good understanding of how it works and can help me with advanced features. So they're helping me with the basic content and structure. And a lot of this also came from the Astro.build tutorial. I'd like to add a new, including like dynamic content like tags, a tag index. So I'd like to add a new feature here to display all of my projects, not just the featured ones. This featured Boolean flag determines that they should appear on the home page. They should appear here. And I only want to feature, a few of them. But even just in the music, I think I have several projects that I would like to list on a portfolio page. So this is going to be kind of tricky. The second thing I'd like to kind of think about is these tags, and if I can unify those with the blog tags. Currently this blog, which I'm not really using, maybe I won't use, maybe I will, I should use it. I don't know. I've never been a blogger, but maybe I can. Has tags. You click a tag and it lists it's not very good looking right now, so I can improve that as well. It lists the pages and you can read the blog post and navigate. So tags are an interesting way of connecting things together. Oh yeah, Astro just has such nice little details, like accessibility audit built in there. I'm not using content islands, which is a way it pulls content from the server. I'm not using some of the more advanced stuff. So let's just focus on the portfolio page. And I can come back and add these projects later. I didn't even add any. I just edited one. But I think it would be more interesting to show how to build a feature. So let me just commit this. And we'll merge this because I did change the data model a little bit right here. I just renamed a field and cleaned up some generative AI comments. And that's about it. So let's ask generative AI, hey, please describe this. Okay, refactored the date out of the date, published for consistency, add, change, that's good enough. Boink, and publish the branch. And what we do is just normally create a pull request and create the pull request. Here it is on GitHub, and I can merge that and basically see the changes there. Normal peer review stuff, I'm the only developer on my personal website, so it doesn't peer review. It doesn't quite make sense. We'll merge that, confirming the merge, and then we'll come back and check out the main branch, refresh. And I'm not really taking advantage of GitHub features like issues on this project, but I might when I start getting ideas for things I would like to add. I might create an issue. The issues are also useful to help me clarify my thoughts, do a little bit of pre-planning, and even help generative AI to help me with the coding part. So in this case, I think let's go ahead and I'll show this workflow for how to create, take an idea for a feature improvement to a project, create a GitHub issue from that idea with sufficient detail, and then prompt generative AI to help you implement that feature. I think that's the basic workflow. Okay. So I'd like to only use just one model for everything. That's an ultimate goal, but so far the closest model to that has been Claude from Anthropic. It's a very high quality model from coding and prose, like linguistic perspective, the way it writes, and even some of the traits it has in the way it interacts and sort of the values it sort of exudes is just a really good experience. But it doesn't have some features like the thinking and it has a little multimodality. I don't think I can upload a music track, so Claude wasn't like a good candidate for this particular task. But let's see, maybe we can get some help from Claude. If I switch to a project. So Claude has this cool idea of project. And a project is just a kind of a way of organizing your chats and giving it supplemental information. Custom instructions to tell it how to generate, in a way. I just almost want to say behave, but I'm struggling to communicate and to describe how these models are, and it's just a confusing thing. They feel very lifelike, but we have to be clear and use, I think, accurate language. Until I think it's anyway. We're going to generate some output. And using different styles, so this is a cool feature of Claude, which you can sort of use that from custom instructions. You can get the Claude to have a particular style. You can pick models. You can attach files, but not, for example, let me double check, things are changing all the time, not audio files. So it's like text only. But you can also put stuff in there from Google Drive. So I've been asking it for help with my content architecture. I might continue this thread. Let me see how long it is. This is a limitation of Claude. It uses, for every message, it uses the whole thread. So everything previously gets sent into context, kind of like what we saw with the Gemini model. But the context window is, with Claude, smaller. Gemini has like a 1 million context length. I'm not sure what Claude's is. And I think ChatGPT, it sort of somehow optimizes the context window. So it's not sending everything, but it has some weighted algorithm that the first and most recent content gets weighted higher, and maybe some of the intermediary content gets down weighted or compressed somehow. I don't know. This is anecdotal from things I've read, and a bit of observation. You can just kind of have a ChatGPT thread that goes and goes and goes, where Claude will say, hey, this is a long conversation. it's going to burn through your token rate and maybe start a new thread. So anyway, this conversation has been kind of long, and essentially this is how I've built the website. We're defining a site architecture. And that generation was a bit broken because it was pulling in UI components that didn't exist or weren't available. And this is kind of what we want to do. So today I want to build this portfolio section. So I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and define a GitHub issue for this portfolio section, and then start working in. And Claude can actually help us with the code, but we might also use GitHub Copilot. We're going to have to kind of choose our adventure. If you're an open source developer, you can qualify, or a student, you can qualify for Copilot for free from GitHub. It's a very useful tool. I highly recommend becoming an open source developer, which any of us can do, or a student, which not everybody can do for financial reasons or just life in general. I know it's kind of not an opportunity always to enroll in university to become an official student to qualify for some free tools. But open source is calling. And GitHub does support open source developers. Even I think if you're building your own website and open sourcing that, it might count. I have to look more into that to validate that. So anyway, we'll be right back and we'll start some code. Okay, thanks for your patience. Let's go ahead and dig in. I'll use the concise or formal. Let's create a GitHub issue to describe the portfolio section of the website. It should dynamically group the projects by category. I think that's good enough. We'll copy this over to GitHub. Well, let's read it here because then I can iterate on it a little bit. So implement portfolio page with dynamic project categories. Okay. Create a portfolio showcasing all the projects dynamically grouped by category. I can't scroll horizontally. This page should import the project data from the project TS data store. Group projects dynamically by category. Sort projects within each category by date. Showing the most recent first. Cool. Probably date or alphabetical, I don't know. Maintain consistent styling with featured projects section of the home page. Cool. So it has the context that we built a featured page project. That means we'll build a component. Yes. Astro components. Include proper accessibility in semantic HTML. Man, this is so cool. Things that I just didn't think of in my one sentence description. Boom. But they're part of this conversation thread. Nice. I should include that in the instructions, in the custom instructions. Anyway, I'll think about it. Implementation details. The page should implement it as an Astro component that uses the base layout component. Nice. Leverages project interface. And yeah, so that's the TypeScript interface. Implements responsive design. Includes a proper heading hierarchy for the project. Display title, description, categories, relevant links, etc. And let's see if it mentions having a project card right here. Component though, right? Smooth transitions between sections. Okay, interesting. Proper spacing between category groups. Okay. Adding category specific styles or icons. Nice. Proper meta tags for each SEO. Cool. Schema org markup. Boom. Complete when projects are correctly grouped. All project information displays correctly. Page is responsive and accessible. Styling matches the site's design system. Project links function correctly. And it sort of has some suggestions for the label. Cool. And then it sort of broke out of the markdown almost, but not quite. Let's just add maybe not. Maybe the project listing on the home page is different than the display of the projects on the portfolio page. The projects on the portfolio page can take up more space, for example. And I don't know if I need a dedicated page for each project. That might be one layer too deep, unnecessary. Then I'd have to think about URL slugs and stuff like that, since we're defining these in a data, like basically JSON almost structure. Okay, let's just go with it. So here I can copy this. It has a little bit of extra. Sometimes Claude is a little bit extra. I don't know what that means. Delete. I sensed a sneeze. The design team. Documentation enhancement, front end. Okay. It's all front end in this project. It's like a static site. I don't know if that counts as front end. I don't like the whole separation of front end, back end as a default mindset thing. Especially on like small startup projects, it's just not sustainable for a lot of projects. This is just an enhancement. I don't know if it's documentation. The whole site is sort of documentation for like my online stuff. Okay. So it's implying a function that doesn't exist. And I think this responsibility of grouping projects by category should be part of the namespace. Project namespace, like we did here. So this example is a bit not what we're going to go for, I think. But it gets, gets me thinking a little bit. Okay. So how to implement? Well, I could sit down and learn and do all this, but I'm not like well-versed and familiar with all these things like TypeScript. So, and some of these details like schema.org, there's a lot to it, this task, that I would like some help from a coding agent to do. So let's go ahead and, interesting. I'm going to grab all this, the cleaned up version of that. And actually, I will modify it a little bit to steer project. Git. Like that. We'll take a quick look at the homepage. Quick look at the homepage. See how it's handling the category title or the index page. Looking at tags, project URL. Where does it go to? Title. Project title. To lowercase. Interesting. Sorry, category title. Interesting. I'll probably need to move this category configuration to a namespace. Project categories or something like that. Or just the project namespace. Kind of makes sense. Now it's mixing some concerns. These are mostly stylistic. It's like kind of presentational. And the data is the not so presentational, so I don't know. I don't want to get too obsessed with that, but I believe we'll need to share this category configuration. So we'll move the category config to the common namespace. something like that. So that way we get the idea, guiding it a little bit on some of the details I know. Anyway, okay. Edit this one more time, grab the context. And now we're going to go into GitHub Copilot edits. We're going to see if I can pull this off with GitHub Copilot. Because GitHub Copilot makes it real easy to get the context into the model for the files themselves. So in VS Code or VS Code Insiders Edition, you can get this GitHub Copilot access for free from GitHub if you're just an open source contributor, developer, and you have a little bit of portfolio. So start contributing to open source today, and you can get free tools and support. So I'm going to just start a new chat. Ask Copilot, and we're right now in the chat mode. Actually, I wanted to start an edit mode. Edit with Copilot. It's pretty cool feature. You can select different models. I'm going to go with the default GPT-4, and we're going to feed it some files that I know are relevant. You can give it the whole workspace, but things start to grow, especially my project has this data. Which basically is a really big file, and I think I need to format it, refactor it, so there's a bit of separation of concerns, not only for my purposes, but when feeding this to the large language model, it starts to struggle. So for example, the interfaces and helper functions, we can move to their own namespace. It's separate from the data itself, the raw data. So let's actually ask it to do that first. So I'm going to go kind of into full screen mode here so we can just focus on the code. I'm going to create a branch. Portfolio feature, something like that. Cool. And we're going to go to make this a little bit wider now. Cool. And it already has the context of this file. So just by having the file open in focus mode, if I double click, it'll open, turn the italics to normal. I mean, it's going to kind of stay open. You can add other files. It's also suggesting a couple that might be relevant that are, for example, using the data. I'm not sure how it gets these suggestions. You can talk to it, and you can attach not only files, but your terminal output, your current, some of the Git branches, for example, screenshots. So it's multimodal and quite helpful. Essentially, it's like Cursor, but I believe more tightly integrated with GitHub because it's unified and in some ways maybe more powerful. I don't know how, I don't think Cursor has sort of like an advantage here when Microsoft and GitHub have entrenchment. Let's continue. So I'm just going to say my observation. So the project's TS file is growing quite large and maybe mixing concerns, data, schema, and functionality. Let's refactor the project TS into separate files for the data and functionality. I believe the schema and functionality are they're more closely related. Let me think for 1 second. The schema is more closely related to the data probably. The functionality can be like helpers.ts, something like that, project helpers.ts. Let's see how it divides that, where it puts the schema. But it kind of makes sense to have this schema, the interface. In this context. We're going to ask, now I hit the play button, the paper airplane button. Move the project data into new file and keep the project TS definition. Create a new file, project data, to store the project data. Interesting. Okay, so now we have 3 tabs open and they have this red square, meaning there's some changes it's waiting for me to review. And I can, it's like a peer review mode. Project data, project functions, and projects. So let's just start here. What is projects now? So it's removed all the data and it's just left the interface. Our collection of projects. And this is where it gets risky. But it also left the helper functions. So project functions got duplicated and not removed from here. Okay, so that's one thing I'll have to clean up. That's why I'm really skeptical about these models being fully autonomous, like agent modes, because of these like unforced errors and little mistakes. So now I've got project data, project functions. So and it didn't edit the index page. So that's because I didn't feed in the context, even though it was suggested. That's okay though. I'll have to do that. Let's go and accept them and then save. Accept, save, accept, save, and then I'll clean these up. All right, so we have the interface, functions, project is type and must be imported using type only import. Interesting. So we're gonna fix that with Copilot. I don't know what that means. I'm not a TypeScript novice even. I'm like TypeScript baby. All right, so that import type, okay. Cool, and same thing here. I made a TypeScript. Nice. Actually, that's cool though. I like typed software. I've been using types increasingly in Python, and it's good. It's a good move. So I'm not opposed to learning, of course. All right. So now I think it's a bit verbose, but I think, all right, we're good. We got some functions or helpers. Functions is cool. And the schema is here and the data is actually here. So now I can edit these independently and not saturate the context window. Boom. As well as my context window. Like I can only keep so much in my brain. Okay, so now let's, the only place we're using these is the index. Let's update the index. And we'll commit this and move forward. So yeah, just when it works, and when I review it, of course, I have to understand, that's the hard part. It saves some time. It saves some time figuring out these details. there's time waiting for the model and stuff. So there are trade-offs. It's not pure efficiency gains. Here we go. Index Astro is ready for me. Interesting. So sometimes it makes unrelated change. Okay, but now we're using the correct import and the type, except those. But what was this? What is this? Just using tabs instead of spaces. Also, I know this is not very conventional. Tabs, spaces, and massive indentation. Probably JavaScript developers are screaming at me right now. So I will, tab size 4, I will align this project with the conventions of JavaScript community, which I believe is to use 2 spaces. Don't hate me. I'm not even sure how the tabs were introduced. And if this is not used, we can just clean that up. So that was just like a little bit unforced error. Okay, now the moment of truth. There's like a VS Code plugin on the project ITX that kind of embeds a browser right here, and I think it's kind of cool, but I can't find it. In any case, does it work? We're running. The project is loading and not breaking. Okay, so that refactoring went well. It saved me some time moving all that copying, pasting, and thinking of the right architecture, so to speak. Although I was in an architectural and feature perspective and not the low level sort of syntax and semantics perspective. And then it helps me describe what I just did. Refactor project data and functions for managing. Let's just do that. Okay, now we're going to actually develop a feature after the refactoring. This is interesting. Okay, so we're going to go back here and we're going to create a whole new page using GitHub Copilot. So I'll be right back and we will dig into more GitHub Copilot action. All right, thanks for your patience. Now we can start on our feature. So we'll open up Copilot Edits again. For our feature, we're going to add a new page called Portfolio. We'll give it the context of our project data at least, as well as our index page, because the index has a reference implementation for these projects list and markup. For consistency, we want to use Tailwind classes. I just did it. I went with Tailwind because everybody's doing it. Nice. So let's get our description again from GitHub that we generated with Claude. Thank you, Claude. We will then maximize this. I think this is all we need context-wise. Let's just see. Here's a big context, but let's go. Creating a new portfolio.astro, so new to put that in its own page, which is really cool. I like how Astro organizes content around the structure of a website. It's a natural fit. Since I'm a primarily content management system developer, CMS developer, and not as much, well, I have done a few web applications, but this is a content management project nonetheless, so I like that structure. 139 lines of code. And it's done pretty much. There's some red squiggles. So let's see what those red squiggles are. I'll accept the changes and I'll read them because it's just the whole file. And then we will fix the indentation. And I'll put like a pre-commit hook in here or something to keep things formatted correctly. We'll look at that. So I'll save it and see, if it formats it, if it fixes any squiggles. Okay, so then we do have these squiggles. Element implicitly has an any type because the expression type software, music, or education can't be used to. Index type of dictionary property software does not exist on type. I might convert it to an enum instead of a list of strings. I'll have to double check this. Project types enum. Okay, so getting back to it, we can close that. We'll need a function. Okay, we have that function. Project category. So this annotation is confusing, but it's saying it's a string accessing dictionary property or something, which we're going to convert to an enum in project TS. Okay, let's say, hey, let's convert project category and status to enums for better type safety. I think that's a thing in TypeScript. Maybe there's a different name for them. Oh, yeah, and it had to change the list of projects accordingly. Hey. Huh. I don't know why it's seeing that change. We've already removed the projects list from the collection, from projects TS, so something's weird there. Okay, but this is more like it. So we have an enum now, software, music, education, and I can manage that. Things are type safe. I like this type safety stuff. I've been using this type safety in GDScript for Godot game development, Python at work and personal projects, and my personal website should be promoting that same type safety approach. Makes your code cleaner. It's easier to think, more explicit. So we'll accept these. These look good. Somehow it's thinking it's deleting files. Now it does have proper, instead of just these string literals or magic strings, we're actually making sure that that category exists. So that's cool. And these are minor changes that didn't destroy the content itself. And what did we do here? So we are also importing the category, and now we have better type safety in our filter, like our arguments. Saving that, and the index then uses the enum as well. This is really good change. I'm reading it a bit more lightly, but here I see the enum accessing the dictionary thing. Instead of interesting, that's a confusing one, but I kind of understand it. And now maybe this is still squiggly. Okay. Copilot maybe can rescue me. Implicitly as an any type because it is an expression. Project category cannot be used to index. Okay, let's see what it did. Reduce record project. This is some TypeScript voodoo. I don't know. JavaScript, even voodoo stuff. It's kind of functional stuff. We got a bunch of records. Project category. Project. Okay. Then we're gonna. What is accumulator? Because we're reducing, so we're accumulating values. I get it. It's leet code. At least it's using ACK instead of A, like the letter A. There we go. So it's accumulating projects by category, but that's what they are, project by category. So it makes it easier for me to read, and it's saying what it's doing here. But yeah, sometimes I need to understand the how just to make sure things look correctly. And red squiggles are gone there, but we have red squiggle here. Red squiggles. Okay. Element implicitly as any type. Okay, so this is similar issue. Nice. I'm glad it can be made squiggleless, squiggle free. And it's more explicit now. It's looking good. Category details, category config, category as project category. Nice. It's casting it basically so we know what it is. It's telling the linter maybe what type this is, this category that is passing into this dictionary accessor. I kind of get it. Rather than just passing it, accessing it implicitly, squiggles mode, hey, we're saying this is actually that. The linter didn't know at that moment. It said it could be anything. But we're saying, no, this is going to be a project category. So it's just like this annotation as, I think that's what's going on. Now, let's take a look at it and see if we have in our navigation. So I didn't pass the navigation. Let's do that next. So navigation components. We can just drag and drop a file there. Let's add the portfolio to the site navigation. And we have now navigation Astro, which has a new thing. Again, I'm sort of co-piloting here. I'm thinking at a high level what I want to achieve and not exactly the how to do it, even though, maybe this is fairly straightforward. In fact, I would like to not use these string literals as well. But anyway, it's doing the how for me, and I can then see I have a new link here and a portfolio page doubling up the title. We can fix that. Organizing by category, very cool. 80% there with some guidance. So in my practical experience and in awareness of hype and concern about these models replacing people's job, I don't see the agents being fully autonomous. I don't see that panning out in the near future. I know they're improving, but I think there's still a sufficient amount of human involvement needed to get a quality outcome. They can do some very amazing work in things that I'm not even capable of. I haven't learned details like around TypeScript, for example, those low level details we saw a moment ago. But they, I think, still benefit from an architectural standpoint, or feature specification, like product manager type of a mindset, as well as guidance at the code level. So even that skill is an important thing to have in software development. I just, in my practical experience with the models as they are today, I don't see strong support for the claims that they will fully automate software engineering. I think there's still a really important role for software engineers to play, and wearing multiple hats, like stepping back. I'm the kind of Copilot actually while this is piloting the code. It's thinking more of features, architecture, best practices like unit tests, stuff like that. That doesn't emerge automatically. Granted, I'm not using a full agent implementation. Google Copilot does have an experimental agent feature in their VS Code Insiders build, but for practical reasons, I'm not going to use that here. I've tried that on another project. It wasn't very successful. Okay, cool. So we got a little bit of a doubling of the heading. So that's a small detail we can fix. Navigation's looking good. So if we go to the portfolio page, there's a convention we've been following to pass in the title to the base layout. So it did that here, which is why we have the title, the first title. Then it also added the title here. So that's an easy one to fix. And I'm mixing tabs and spaces. There we go. So this is cleaned up. Okay, I see that was the other way around. Mixing tabs and spaces. Now it's generating some text for me. Explore a comprehensive collection of projects spanning software development, music production, and education. Each project showcases unique skills and creative solutions. Okay, now I'm going to ask for Claude's help here. A little bit of Claude is a good writer. So we're going to hop back over to Claude. I say I built, but I didn't build it. GPT, basically built it, but nonetheless. I'm going to switch the style to be more explanatory. And I'm going to offer the style guide here. Style. I think I created one. Style guide. And just for context, I can share the style guide here. And it's essentially also generated with the help of Claude and GPT. But it's boiling down like the brand voice, tone, writing style, stuff like that, and some visual things. So if I include this style guide, we can get a better one. I'm just going to state what I've observed and not make a request here. However, that introduction could be improved to align with our style guide. I'm stating it could be improved, and I'm implying it needs, like that Claude should help me. So it says, let me help you revise the portfolio introduction to better align with our style guide, particularly focusing on educational, inclusive, and professional voice characteristic while maintaining clarity and engagement. Welcome to my project portfolio where technology and creativity intersect to solve real-world. Let's break it out, I guess. All right, welcome to my project portfolio where technology and creativity intersect to solve real-world challenges. Through these projects, I explore how software development can enhance music production and how educational tools can make learning more accessible and how these disciplines inform and strengthen each other. Whether you're a fellow developer, musician, educator, or curious learner, you'll find detailed insights into problem-solving approaches, technical decisions, and creative processes behind each project. It's a bit overselling links to albums and GitHub repositories. Well, and I don't quite do those. I don't quite explore how software development can enhance music production. Not quite. My music projects are sort of independent of the software projects. They're kind of independent. So there is a musical aspect to this, but it's not music production. It's music like learning. So what I will do is actually give Claude this details. So essentially, the description of software development enhancing music production is not quite accurate. There isn't always overlap in projects. For example, the albums are their own realm, previously separate from my software development persona. Likewise, the educational projects mostly stand alone, although there is overlap with the Piano Fitness app being software developed for musical education. So that kind of fits all three of them. I'll just give it a little more context. If I had added more projects, it maybe would have been able to give me a better description. We will do that, but you can kind of see the general idea. Context matters not only with large language models, but especially with people. We have to learn to give the right context, especially in online spaces or remote work. Look at my project portfolio. Let's just copy that and get that into VS Code. Double check, that's the content architecture. Go to my project portfolio where I share my work across three distinct domains: software development, music creation, and educational content. While these areas sometimes intersect on projects like Piano Fitness, which bridges software development and music education, each domain represents its own complete body of work. Interesting, complete body of work. Okay, here you'll find everything from ambient electronic albums and traditional piano compositions to educational programming resources and innovative software tools. Okay, I don't want to oversell myself. Each project tells its own story of creative exploration, technical innovation, or educational impact. It's good enough though. 80% there. We did a small adjustment, getting us 85% there. I'll refactor it later. But hey, we've got a whole feature. That was the point. Wow. Portfolio page with emoji. Wow. Labels and colors. Wow. Huh. Now that I'm stepping back a little bit, we'll commit this change, and it's a good point. I'm realizing that this summary card, project summary card, for example, can be shared across the home and portfolio page, because in both contexts, we just want a summary where we're listing multiple projects. However, that also kind of means I might want to offer an extended view. When you click on that, have a page with the full details and lengthy description of each project, which also means we would need a page slug, basically, a unique page slug, or some other way of generating the URL structure, or some JavaScript thing, while maintaining accessibility, such as a modal popover. Could be actually a way of doing it. Let me think on that for a minute. Let's commit these changes. Okay, so I think I will refactor this to use a shared component for the project summary kind of thing, and then think of a way of displaying the extended details on click. Like if you click anywhere, maybe, yeah, the modal logic could be, I don't know if modals are an anti-pattern. I'll have to think about that. But anyway, it could be embedded in the component itself to render a Tailwind modal. Does Tailwind have modals? Are modals an anti-pattern? Are they an accessibility concern? So Tailwind UI is a proprietary thing. Flowbyte. Material Tailwind. I might adopt like a thing. But they all have these pro. This is turning into WordPress. Everything has a pro version. I'm not against people making a living. But it sort of can have a corrosive or fracturing effect on an ecosystem when everything has like these, at least on the WordPress ecosystem, when everything has these kind of freemium models. So one accessibility concern is that it does introduce a requirement for JS. I don't know if that's accessibility or usability, or both. But it does look pretty good. So I would like to use a Tailwind component framework. That would be kind of cool, and with HTML, compatibility and tree shaking, so I don't ship all of the things that I'm not using to the browser. Praline Pro though. Preline Pro. So one thing I can do is have a little bit of research here with the help of Peer Perplexity. I would like to display additional details about some page items. I'm considering UX patterns that I can use to display additional details. Complete. On demand, such as a modal dialog. So don't predicate it on using a modal, but say, hey, what are the UX patterns I could use? Stepping back, I don't know. I'm not a UX expert. So let's start with this one question. What are the UX patterns? We can search social, maybe academic, and we'll do deep research on this. And this question doesn't have to be Tailwind specific now. So I'm building a portfolio website that shows summary cards for various projects and would like to display additional details about some page items. Extended descriptions, additional links, etc. I'm considering UX patterns I can use to display the additional details on demand, such as modal dialog. We'll do this in both Claude and the Perplexity, but Perplexity is good here because it's going to search and give me a little bit of research. So I'm building a portfolio website that shows summary cards for various projects. I want to display additional details about some page items, extended descriptions, further links, etc. I'm considering UX patterns such as modal dialog that I can use to display additional information on demand. What web platform design patterns can I consider, and what are the trade-offs such as accessibility, usability, and site bloat? That's pretty well phrased. So it's going to go out and search a little bit. Let's ask the same question to Claude. Since it has all this context, it didn't need the additional context, but anyway, I'm just using the same prompt to compare to like A, B. Let me walk you through several web platform design patterns. Modal dialogues. A modal dialog appears as an overlay on top of the main content, focusing user attention on detailed information. The web platform provides the dialogue element specifically for this purpose. Perfect. Benefits. Native browser support for focus management. Built-in accessibility. Yes. ARIA modal, focus trapping, keyboard navigation, escape key, closes dialog, simple JavaScript. Okay, simple. I like this word. Clear visual hierarchy. Yeah, because it's like in front of things. Can be disorienting on mobile devices. Yes. Requires JavaScript for interaction. Okay, may interrupt user flow. Okay, but they're initiating action. They're clicking and need to be able to dismiss on mobile, especially like clear, like close button. Should handle browser compatibility. Fallback for older devices. Browsers. Yeah, I'm kind of targeting evergreen browsers here. Expandable sections. That's the other one that did come to mind, but I didn't explicitly say that. Details and summary. More about this project. Summary. Zero JavaScript. Native accessibility. Progressive enhancement. Friendly. So zero JavaScript can be enhanced to have more dynamism. Maintains content context. Minimal code footprint. Limited styling options. Less dramatic visual feedback may cause layout shifts. Cannot easily coordinate multiple sections. I don't know if I need to do that. Tabs. Familiar interaction pattern. Good for organizing things. Requires JavaScript functionality. I thought it said progressive enhancement. Oh, and this is another thing I don't have. This is what I'm trying to avoid, actually. So maybe it's just better to have a URL slug and display these on dedicated pages. That would also be better for search engines, perhaps. But then I'd have to have a way of enforcing uniqueness on the slug, which is maybe not impossible. Progressive disclosure through links. Right. That's a good option. That's the first option I was thinking, but it brings me back to the slug. For a portfolio website, I recommend a hybrid approach. Use project cards for essential information visible by default. Implement the native dialog element for quick detail view. Provide progressive links to dedicated project pages. All right, but the problem. So one problem with the progressive disclosure through links is that I would need to maintain unique URL slugs, which may introduce complexity in my data model since I'm using static content framework without a database. That's a long sentence. However, I might be able to introduce some kind of a linting step or pre-processing that scans my project data and highlights duplicate URL slugs. That would be really cool. It's probably possible. And if I just pass it the data model, and the data, which is like a super long list. I'll just do this one. I'll do one example. So essentially I'm just passing in some context to Claude. I'm kind of saturating the rest of this. Here we go. Long chats cause you the context window with my style guide and everything else. Let me explain how we can ensure uniqueness of URL slugs in your project data structure. This is an important consideration since unique URLs are crucial for routing and SEO, even in a static site. The routing is like, yeah, you can't, it's ambiguous, and how does it choose which content to display? First, let's understand the challenge. In a static website without a database, we need to validate data integrity during development rather than at runtime. Right, because the database can say this is a unique column. There are several approaches we can take with different trade-offs. Runtime type checking and validation. Here's how we could add runtime validation to your existing data structure. Very cool. I'm going to take a quick break and we'll get back to this. All right, thanks for your patience. Let's continue. So Zod, we're introducing a project dependency. I see it as a popular one. It's a strange name, but okay. TypeScript first validation library. It's been around for a while. I remember talking about this and debating, I don't know, debating, but just complaining about JavaScript stuff back in 2018, 2019. Zod was like the thing at that point, I believe so. Okay, so Zod object. Scheme with uniqueness constraints. Nice. Oh, it'll generate from the title to lowercase replace. Wow. Okay, it's validating the wrong field. Not the slug would be a better one. URL press the project URL is actually for the link to the project. I can see how it got confused. I need to start a new chat. The slug should be unique. I believe the titles will be more or less unique. So that's a good approach to generating the slug. So when the module loads, and validation, I guess, will appear in the console. Interesting. Okay, that kind of makes sense. So it's runtime validation. And the routing gets simplified. It's looking good. Huh, now I can publish these artifacts. I wonder how long that's been there. Probably a while, but this is cool. I have a couple of artifacts I've built that they're very simple apps that I would just like to use and have a link to. Okay, I think we're on the right path here. But ideally, this uniqueness, I would validate the uniqueness when editing. And I would see red squiggles. In any case, this isn't yet a problem. I think I can just go forward with generating URL slugs from the title. The titles are pretty unique already. And cross the bridge of validation when it comes. Less is more, right? So let's just I mean, it's not a bad solution. Let's go with it. It's already here on the table. So we can feed this, and let's see what we got. Modal dialogues, Perplexity is doing a little research for us. Easier to read. It found some sites. Expandable sections, inline progressive disclosure, read more link, which is sort of like the expand, and tabs. I'm not gonna use those. Tooltips and popovers, no. dedicated page, details page. That's essentially what I think it boils down to. Creating a project details component and a project summary component. Sharing the project summary component across the portfolio page and the home page, and then the project details component is used on the, or just project details page. I don't know how that works. I have to remember how that works. The same way I did the blog page. It's all components. I think they're all Astro components. Sounds like the tea is ready. I'll be right back. We're going to dig into this. We're really close. We've got, I think, a way forward. Cool beans. So let's close that. I'll be right back. Sencha. I remember when I started out in web development, like Sencha was a thing. And what was the other one? Dojo Toolkit. But it's so like, I think they're not active anymore. 3 years ago. I mean, yeah, not really. Yeah, that was interesting. Kind of not when I was originally starting out. I don't know when Dojo became popular and what it was competing against at that point. Sencha, I think, and Dojo were two big frameworks. We're going to look for a Tailwind component framework if and when it becomes needed. But right now, we're not using the modal dialog, for example, so I think we can just keep things very simple and fewer dependencies. So actually, we got some fairly conclusive results from Perplexity. That's interesting stuff. And I'll ask it to research Tailwind CSS component frameworks without a freemium model. Fully open source only, please. Yeah, just something. I'm not opposed to people making a living. There's ways we need to monetize our work. That's true. But for open source projects especially, I have to use fully open source components. And it could be that I can just stick with the community and free version of those components. But if there's already a framework out there that's fairly comprehensive and just fully open source, might be worth checking out. Also, I'm not opposed to contributing to open source. I do not only code contributions, but financial contributions. So it's not necessarily about the money. It's about, in a way, kind of keeping things pure. And it's a difficult decision what goes in the open source and what goes in the premium version of these things. And you have to address that with every feature that gets added. And I'd rather just not have that conflict, that tension in the projects that I use. So let's continue developing. Which hopefully Astro, I don't know how they're going to sustain their effort. I know sustainability in open source is a big topic, an important topic to address. So let's hop back over here to VS Code and kind of describe what we're trying to achieve here and give it the right context. Let's add so under the edits, Okay, so it's got the functions and the project data. So the prompt is, let's add URL slug field to the project data model that can be used for a later feature of unique page routes to project details pages. In order to work correctly, the project URL slug values need to be unique so they can be selected correctly while building the content, essentially the build step before publishing. And actually, now that I think of it, the URL slug doesn't need to be part of the model. It's a helper function, generate slug, right? That essentially takes the title. So the Claude suggestion of kind of baking it into the data model, and probably based on my prompt, isn't quite necessary. I believe this helper can be just used in the when rendering the template in the context of the individual project. So project title is the unique. Yeah, so let me discard this and reprompt. That was incorrect. The project title may contain Unicode. I think it's good to be safe and be Unicode first. I don't know if I'm overcomplicating things, and try not to do that. All right, let's add a helper function to verify that project titles are unique, and add a helper function get URL slug from the project title, which may contain your Unicode characters. If possible, the uniqueness validation should happen in the VS Code IDE by highlighting duplicate titles and the underlined squiggles. That way I'm basically aware of those when I'm managing the data. You know, like the tab turns red, for example. Now it has the context from the previous chat, so it might make the same mistake here. I might have to, let's just see. Yeah, wait, yeah, it did the same mistake. All right. So we'll accept this. We'll have to fix those. See if we can determine the right file. Let's get this one. Yeah, but that's the wrong. So we'll escape that. This is actually under these enums are. That's confusing. I'll come back to that in a moment. But these are wrong. And then get my imports correct. Let's see if I, okay, so I do need that. Somehow that got reverted. Let's see what happened. And this got added back. What's going on? This is an example like why autonomous agents would kind of choke on some of these features. Okay, so we've got that. Now our import should be correct. And I don't need this to be uniquely verified in the browser, in the IDE, but that would be super cool. I'll have to learn about that. So now, basically, generate slug kind of can live close to, it should live in the project functions, I think. But the data validator can live in the data namespace. Project slug. Now we're going to be able to use this project slug to generate URL routes. So the order we should probably do this is first just clear out the context, start a new chat. So we don't have some kind of repeating hallucinations. We'll add this to project functions to the namespace, to the context window. We will add a new page for project list, project details. Then we can route to that page. So it should be project/project slug. And we'll feed the model a little bit about our, well, I suppose just the portfolio page, so it can get some idea of the styles. And I need to remember to refactor the project summary into a component card component thing. Okay, it looks like we're good. So we have project detail.astro. That's an interesting thing. We can attach a slug or get slug helper to the data model and use that in the validation. We don't need to validate slug, we're validating the titles. Okay. So yes, I come from a background in web development, and using the Django web framework is one of my primary tools. And from the Django, I've taken away the philosophy of like fat models, where the model has the data, it's object oriented, so it's a class, and classes can have methods or properties that are masquerading, methods masquerading as properties in Python. So this method getSlug, I think kind of naturally in that paradigm would be put on the model itself. I know like pure functional programming would say have a pure function that returns a value, and then you can unit test it. I know I can also unit test model properties. And that all comes up because we have a project. It's going to iterate over those and look for this slug, which isn't a property. So this could be getSlug. I'll just see if TypeScript can have, let me double check what's going on here. Projects. Okay. So it's appending the property here at runtime, but rather, can't we just, because then we have to duplicate that every place we use it. Rather, I would centralize that on the model by moving this helper to, whoops, model itself. I think this is one of the rationale for putting methods on the model, and perhaps even alias them as a property like we can do in Python. So then if I go to projects, I'll ask, put this there, and I'll say to be a method. I'm assuming we can do methods of the interface. Can you do methods of an interface? Prototype generate slug function. Is that valid? No, it's a type. Okay, so that approach won't work. All right, so we'll go with the functional approach. That's cool, that's cool. That makes sense. Let's see if it'll fix that import for me. Intelligence. That's cool. I get it. Explicit exports. This seems a bit heavy. But it's going to be doing it at build time. In other words, when it's building the content. So it might just work. Okay, now we need URL routing. What else is red here? Something squiggly here. What's the property here? Long description. I think it's pretty good. Now let's set up a routing, which I think we can get back from Claude here. It had some kind of idea. Astro routes are defined in a different way. Let me double check here. So if we bring this over. Astro. Routing. Astro uses standard HTML anchor elements to navigate between routes. There is no framework-specific link component provided. Static routes, dynamic routes, server. Because routes must be determined at build time, a dynamic route must export a get static paths. Yeah. Cool. So we'll need a project.astro defining the parameter in its file name. So this actually will be here. Just thinking portfolio, it sounds nice, but just projects is kind of what I'm after here. So if I go here, pages, projects, then I can move this portfolio to index.astro. And then I can move this project detail to square project .astro. Then we're going to get that as we need to define get static paths at the top. And I think I can go back over here and fix these. And I have to head out soon. Okay. And so add that, add this, which has some errors, and we'll fix those real quick. Let's see what we get. Okay, no squiggles, good. Give it the docs example. server-side generation, SSG, I think that's what that is. Which is basically how web frameworks have worked for a while, since like CGI bin days, maybe before that even. But now we have a word for it, server-side generation. It's good stuff. And I like it because it doesn't ship much to the client. Astro is very lean and the content is static, so I don't need like some kind of process running when basically the content isn't changing. So why do I generate it dynamically every time when it's not necessary? All right, so get static paths. We map them and get the slug. Wow, that's so elegant. That works. Wow. Now on our project page, so we want to link to our internal display of the project rather than the external thing. Keep people on the site a little bit longer, offering extended details, search engine optimized information. And that gives me also the opportunity to have multiple links on the project itself, such as to the demo, the GitHub repository, or embedding SoundCloud widget, things like that. Pretty cool. All right, let's see. Still working on it. GitHub Copilot is pretty effective. It's pretty powerful, and I like the choice of models as well, but I've had good experience with the GPT-4o model overall. Still working on it a little bit, applying edits. This is one reason we want to keep our files kind of small and granular, not just for the models to have smaller context window, but also for people. When we're reading this, we don't have so much to think about. Okay. Looks like I made a couple of line changes on the projects page. We're importing the generate slug. And we're going to use that here. Looks good. All right, so we'll save these. Internal server no cached compile metadata found for something. And we got a 404 page for portfolio because I named it to projects. Yeah, so that was a breaking change. I need to fix because the portfolio page is trying to refresh when I change the server. No problem. We'll go to our navigation component, and this should be projects. Now we bounce this to the side, and now we have page that doesn't exist anymore. Makes sense. Portfolio sounds nice, but really it's just about project. Now we have, and we can change the title if we want. Now what do we get when I click here? Projects types of change. Error occurred. Missing parameter. Project. Okay, no problem. That Copilot can fix the. Slug.astro, what? Wait a minute. I see. So it did an unforced error. And this one's it's a bit confusing for me how these work, but let's rename this. So essentially, this becomes a param project slug. Let's update the project slug to correctly use the project slug and fetch the project rendered details. No. Well, okay, slug is fine. I don't want to fight it. Projects slug. Okay. New file. Delete the old file. Save the new file. Tied to change. It's working. Project URL, very cool. Tags, and I'll integrate these tags with the blog soon. Maybe even make a tag cloud if that's still a thing. I like it. So I can go back to projects, murmurations, nice. I don't have the extended description here, but it's working, it's working. Huh. I like this, it's search engine optimized, keeps people on my site, gives me a little bit more flexibility about like how to display particular types of projects. So I think one little thing I can do now is, since the index for the projects and the index, what is this? Let's move this configuration. If it hasn't already been moved, the category configuration remains the same. To the data projects, so I hop over here where I have my schema definition. I think it's also an all right place to have a category config, and I can share it across. I have to export that. I think. So this is the pages index, and this is the projects index. And then we have projects.ts. That way it's just not duplicating that. But I don't know why my export's not working. That's a bit confusing. Okay, and so it also did a little bit with the generate slug for me, so that's good. Category config, accept these changes, and this I actually have to do, and then if I move it to a card, it will be fixed. Category config, I just wasn't reading correctly. And then it, why did I remove that? Projects, yes. That's kind of a hallucinatory deletion. This is confusing to me because category config not there anymore. Okay. I'm gonna have to leave here soon. How do I correctly export this? Just like that, right? Yeah. Then we don't need the project category import because that's focalizing those. Now I think we're good. Let me double check. If I go home, things are working. I can go straight to the project. Oh yeah, I have to fix that. Projects, type to change. I'll remove that. I might not need that property. There we go. And so this change now is to just take the projects index and let's create a project summary Astro component that uses the markup from projects index to consolidate the summary details into a common component that can be used across the pages index and projects index. think that way we're sharing code, and if I make a change in one to one component, it's going to be consistent in both places. I don't have this drift. Okay, so we've got a project summary component. It's quite an extensive change here. So mainly, what's happening here? Just indentation. Project summary, project, good. Okay, did it work? Homepage, working. Link goes to the project slug. Projects page, working. Link goes to the project internal page. And if I look at these diffs, this is a bit risky. I always try to remember there. Review the changes, check the diffs. So it must be just white space changes, which is annoying. This is removing the duplicate components. So the last thing maybe we can do is add an editor config or something. So I don't know if that should be under Astro. That's no longer true. I'll just do a chat. Okay, so in Astro projects that are edited in VS Code and possibly other editors, where can we define common code formatting rules like two-space indentation? Are there common rules we can adopt so I don't have to invent my own conventions? I think I'll add like workspace here because I don't know. You know, editor config is one. What's conventional? I don't know the conventions here. I like Dart language, for example. It just has a more or less formatting built in, and in Flutter has team have published and maintain formatting things. I gotta go though. It's 1:45. Prettier. Okay, so they're just saying editor config. We'll just edit that with editor. Similar style and prettier. I think that is the de facto. Anyway, I'll have to do this off stream because I really need to run. But yeah, this has been another live code session. We've made some really great progress on this personal website, adding a new feature today. And just some minor details remain for consistency in the project. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're doing well and have a great day.